All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Roulette Realtors featuring myself, Clive, and my partner in crime, Hector.
Hey,
Right.
hi.
So, Hector, what are we doing today?
Today we're going to be talking about the madness that has happened in the real estate market for the month of November, specifically the middle of November that we're
Hmm.
talking about. And we are now in a stage where six new launches, many of you on the channel might have heard about it. Six launches happened in mid-November. It's been a crazy period of time in terms of both the number of buyers as well as some record prices in certain projects.
Hmm.
So Clive and myself decided to do an episode that focuses on what happens after the madness now, what this means for everyone moving forward.
Yes. Okay. So let me just share some slides, right, containing our thoughts in terms of this the November madness. Okay. So before we start, right, just again, just a bit of disclaimer, right, which is the information we're sharing is just our opinions, right? So if anyone you're in the audience would like to have further advice, okay, so feel free to get in touch with both of us so that we can offer you professional advice, right, on real estate matters, right? So we hope that our opinions, right, will help you in your real estate journey. Okay, so good. So I'll start the slideshow. Okay, so just to round out what Hector just mentioned about the November Madness. Okay. So in November, a total of six new launches happened, right? And it sort of lure out the demand, the genuine demand that we see across the island, right? So the numbers in Chuan Park was 76% sold. So, but then it's 696 units out of 916 units sold on that weekend itself. Then followed by Emerald Katong, which cleared 99%, right? 835 units. As we speak, it's probably all close to a full sell, right? And last but not least, Nava Grove cleared 65% at 359 units out of 552 units. Right. So for Hector, how do you see the entire November Madness playing out?
I think, as a summary for those who may or may not have known about this, yes, like we had six launches, right? Of those six launches, five were for condominiums, and one for an executive condominium project, specifically Novo Place. So why we wanted to flesh out these three projects, Trump Park, Admiral of Katong, and Nava Grove, is simply because on the launch weekend, on the very first weekend where these projects launched simultaneously, we were looking at close to 2,200 units being transacted. These are new sales, right, for all the condominiums. And of that 2,200, Trump Park, Admiral of Katong, UK for short, and Nava Grove actually accounted for 1,700 of that. So it does give us a very skewed perspective in terms of these three projects being the leaders in terms of the sales numbers for these particular series of launch that happened in November. So it's a very sizable number, mind you. Beyond that 76% for Trumpang, 99 for EOK, 65 for Nava Grove, we are talking about respectively 700, 800, and 400 units
Hmm.
rounded off, right? Sold across these three projects. So it does give us an indication that there is a very huge appetite from the buyers in today's market. And what this translates to, the interesting point about this is for specifically Trump Park at UK, we were talking about combined slightly more than 1,700 units available for sale. And the number of checks collected in totality was more than 6,000.
Hmm.
This gives us a subscription rate of 3x and above
Hmm.
for more projects. So you have to understand that when they have transacted across Trump Park, EOK, Namago, when they've transacted 1,700 units for that opening weekend, there is still a substantial group of buyers who were ready to make a purchase or who have expressed interest. And these are in the thousands. They're out there in the market right now. And what this means is that there's going to be a spillover effect on existing projects as well as upcoming projects ahead for next year.
Right. So I also kind of want to add on to Hector's point about the number of units sold, which is Based on November statistics alone, at this time of recording, November hasn't fully ended yet. But uh, we already got record highs in OCR as well as RCR pricing just based on the new launches, right? So for everybody's information, right, the median price in the uh RCR hit all-time record high of slightly over $3,000 PSF. And of course, with Trump up being sold at an average of 2,579, same the median price uh of OCR also hit right around 2005 PSF, right? So we are going to look deeper into what all these numbers mean, right, in the overall landscape of the real estate market on the next slide, right? More specifically, right, understanding the price trends, not just in November itself, but we look at a longer term horizon from January 2013 to today. And how do we make sense of the price, right? So with that, then we can understand whether the price is likely to go up further, or even as some of you might think it might fall, or even uh uh go up even faster, right? So maybe for Hector, let's dissect what does this graph mean for the pricing ahead.
Sure. So at this time of recording, this particular chart was generated the night before. So we're looking at November 26, 2024. The reason why we have looked at the data from the last 11 years, why not 10, why not 5, right? Why 11 so specifically? Is that in 2013, we had the first series of cooling measures that were introduced into the market.
Mm.
So to me, it feels like that particular era where cooling measures and policy regulations took place in the real estate market in Singapore is of a significant difference compared to the times before 2013. So looking at 2013 across to 2024, we see three very distinct lines. The very curly lines represent the month-to-month changes in terms of average PSF across the three regions in the property market, namely the dark blue representing the CCR, the orange representing the RCR, and the OCR at the bottom represented by the yellow line. So when we draw and extrapolate from 2013 to 2024, we know, Clive, how we have in the market, people always say, oh, nothing, prices always go up, nothing really
Mm.
comes down. This is an actual visual representation of how the average price per square foot of property in these respective regions have increased over the years. So
Mm.
from 2013 to 2024, we see an uptrend line across all the regions. But what's interesting, represented by the dotted lines, what's interesting here is that you will notice that the gap between the OCR and RCR, and also the respective gap between RCR and CCR, narrowing over time.
Mm.
So it used to be quite a significant gap represented by the blue dot, the green dot, and the red dot on the extreme left. And as we move to the top right, where prices are today in the month of November 2024, we start to see that the dots come closer to each other.
Mm.
And in my opinion, the conclusion drawn here is yes, OCR has significantly narrowed the gap with RCR. They're very, very close if you look at the green dot and the red dot on the right. But similarly, your green dot with your blue dot, right? Your RCR between the price trend between RCR and CCR has also narrowed down. And what
Mm.
this means for the average consumer is that you're starting to see as prices go up, the rate of growth in terms of property prices in these respective regions, on average, are starting to be much different, with OCR and RCR accelerating.
Mm.
Any comments on why OCR is spiking up faster than RCR? Like,
Right. So I was about to get into that. Right. So if the viewers can actually zoom into the month of November, which is right up to this particular region, right? Actually, sprite prices spike in November, both not just for OCR but also for RCR as well as CCR, right? And then I mean the spike in, of course, the OCR prices can pretty much be attributed to Trump up pricing lah. But just to qualify, this is all transactions. We're not just looking at new launch transactions. These are all transactions in OCR, right? So with due respect to what Trump up has achieved, the fact that the average prices for OCR you can see was in November was like 2003, 29, right? Followed closely by RCR 2004 and CCR 2007, right? One would naturally draw the conclusion that it seems like over time, right, OCR properties perform the best, right? Yeah, given that OCR started from a low base pricing and kind of ended at albeit lower price than RCR, but yet the percentage change is more sizable, right? So why does OCR properties perform better, right? So back to Hector's question, I'll attribute that to three reasons. First is the schools, the amenities, and also potentially proximity to transport nodes, which also RCR has. Okay, so I'm throwing out a question there, right? That now that OCR properties have kind of appreciated most in percentage terms, does it mean that you know the opportunities lie in OCR or it lies in RCR or even in CCR? What do you think?
I think it really depends. So again, pricing trends give us an idea about direction in which it's moving. But I think for prospective buyers out there in the market, it's always important to understand the area they are buying into, the characteristics of that area. I'll leave CCR out of the equation for now. RCR is primarily close to the central region for some of the districts. OCR is a bit on the outskirts. That's a fundamental fact. From a geography standpoint, is a factual thing. But the reason why I think OCR prices have seen a greater growth is number one, they've traditionally had a smaller base. Number two, there is constant transformation right now from a government standpoint. You may or may not know this, but there are decentralization policies in the government right now, meaning they are now starting to branch out and really spruce up and rejuvenate some of these smaller townships in the OCR area so that the workforce is no longer just concentrated within your very traditional uh, CBD, your central region. So with these policies in place, we are starting to see a lot of transport nodes being created. We are talking about a period of 11 years where the Northeast line has sprung up, the Circle line has sprung up, the downtown line has sprung up. And this has given relatively good access to traditionally what we call non-mature estates in the HDB term in the OCR region, bringing people closer to work, bringing work closer to home. So there's that concept there that is starting to create a lot of transformation in OCR. But the reason why I wouldn't necessarily say just because OCR is traditionally showing the greatest amount of growth, I would necessarily want to buy a property in OCR is because there's still value in some of these districts, especially in RCR. There's still a fundamental quality of life. There's a fundamental expectation. You brought up a good point about schools as well. That's located in some of these areas that drive demand for property in those areas. So to me, when I see a spike up in the average PSF, especially for OCR, knowing that majority of it came from Trump Park, um, my personal opinion here is that the average PSF that was achieved at Trump Park pushing 2,600, that to me is an anomaly. That is not something we naturally will see or are going to constantly see in the markets ahead. Granted, yes, there was a huge demand for Trump Park. There were a lot of people that bought into Trump Park at 2,600. But we have to bear in mind that this is on the backlash of an expectation or an indicative pricing. I think we covered in the previous video that Trump Park was indicated to launch close to 2,300 PSF. So for it to achieve an average of 2,600, there was a shock factor. I think there were a lot of buyers who felt angry. There were a lot of buyers who felt disappointed. And that's, to me, is an anomaly that's happening in the market right now. It's not necessarily to say that OCR prices on average in the near future is going to surpass RCR. I think there will always be that substantial gap because the RCR districts do offer a little bit more in terms of that quality of life, schools closer to central region versus some of these other outskirt towns in the OCR region. So to me, if I were to sum it up in a very simple manner, I would say that you want to be a bit cautious about OCR properties, especially bearing in mind your finances and understanding what the walkaway price is. But that RCR is trending at a fair value in the market. The prices at Trump Park for it being an OCR property is an anomaly. So I would probably take that with a pinch of salt.
Mm,
So for me, right now, the opportunity is not to go into an OCR property that potentially has another anomaly price, but rather going in at fair value for RCR properties. What do you think, Clive?
I share the same sentiments as well, right? Because since we have that wealth of data stretching from Jan 2013 to November 2024, you can see there are some spots of the data, right, using my cursor that, whenever like OCR prices start to case close to RCR, or even in some months, right, where even surpass RCR, there's always that mean reversion, in a sense that OCR prices by logic cannot be higher than RCR prices. So simply because OCR prices are starting to narrow to RCR, it doesn't quite mean that OCR itself, it's the value is in OCR, right? As Hector mentioned, just in the month of November, we started a slide showing the November madness about, you know, uh Trump up selling at hitting the all-time PSF record for OCR, right? So that could be an anomaly, right? So uh it might not be it might not be wise for anybody who will just take the data and face value and straight away conclude that OCR is the place to be in right now, right? Yeah. So the opportunity right now, both of us collectively would appear to agree that the opportunity right now is in RCR, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
given what has transpired, right, in the November madness, right, we feel that there are still pockets of opportunities, right, in the RCR region, right, more specifically in D15 that I would like to present to everybody in the next slide, right? Okay,
Hmm. So
so
why D15, Clive?
because
Why specifically within RCR? Why are we talking about District 15? Where is it? And what are the products we are familiar with in
hmm,
D15?
because for me personally, D15, it is a very special RCR area for two big reasons. First is a very short drive by ECP to the town area, right? So you are onto the ECP and you reach Suntec in like minutes, right? Less than 10 minutes. And also in D15, it's a very big area. So we have a lot of liquidity, a lot of transactions where people can always reference, past transactions to justify the value that is happening right now, right? And
You touch on a very good point. Here's a fun fact for everyone watching the video, right? Did you know that D15 in the RCR region, D15 historically has had the highest number of transactions? And the volume is very important for one key point. The point here is about the appreciation in the property. I'm not here to debate about, I'm buying a property for own stay versus I'm buying a property for investment. The point here is that when there is more transactions happening in the area, it's a natural push for prices to appreciate. Quite simply put, if I were to sell my house today, Clive and I are neighbors.
mm,
If I were to sell my house today at X dollars, it's very likely if Clive selling his house 1 year down the road, he's probably going to sell for more than X dollars. It's just the nature of things, right? So with that transaction volume, you can start to imagine having more transaction volume leads to a higher potential for prices to appreciate. If there was only one transaction for a project in the last 10 years, as a prospective buyer, when you're doing your own due diligence, when you're doing your own search to buy a property, you're probably going to benchmark the house that you want to buy or the property that you want to buy on that one transaction that was 10 years ago. But like we showed you in the previous chart, the prices have moved. The prices have climbed across the last 11 years. So more likely than not, that transaction volume is going to have a very big impact on prices appreciating. And this is why we won't go into this today, and this is one of the main reasons why when we talk about buying into a development, we have to be very careful, especially if your objective is for capital appreciation. We have to be very careful into buying into a boutique development. Not that boutique developments are necessarily poorer than bigger developments, but simply because bigger developments have more units, you have better price support, and you have more transaction volume happening.
So back to Hector's point, right? Uh, I would like to compare, right, what has transpired at Emerald Katong, which is a big development over 800 units, compared to Continuum, which is also a big development, right? At above to 800 units, right? So we saw that with what is transacted at Emerald Katong is a 15th floor unit at 1.786 million, right?
Actually bigger.
Yeah, so the floor area is it doesn't include the aircon labs because it's a post harmonization project. For those viewers who are not so familiar, what's a post harmonization project? That means for government land sales, that's after uh a certain period last year, right? So the aircon ledgers are considered non-strata areas. Okay, we specifically pointed out Emerald Katong this land, this floor plan with a continuum floor plan which is very similarly sized. Okay. So the pocket opportunity is that if Emerald Katong can clear at 1.87, sorry, 786 million, right? There might be value, right, in a nearby freehold project, the continuum. Right. So we are showing everybody like the ground floor that's priced just slightly 100K more. Okay, granted is the ground floor, right? But for freehold, right, it should theoretically give it, a 20% premium, right? So we are seeing, right, the November madness, you can call it November frenzy, you can call it Emerald Katong, actually giving uh value to what we can find in continuum, right? Of course, this is not the only continuum unit that's available, right? So we are seeing pockets of opportunity. Hence, buyers have been flocking to continuum to snap up the value buys, right? So for those of you who are thinking like, maybe I missed out on Emerald Katong, I want to take a look at what are the available value buys and continuum. Yeah, so there's always a way to we can guide you through the process to identify what are the value buys. Yeah, so
Hmm.
for Hector, what?
Something,
Hmm.
something I do want to add on this as well. So yes, we are talking about two, in this particular example, right, it's one of the few pockets of opportunities that we have identified. But yes, granted, both of them are two bedder, similar living spaces, similar layout, shape. I think what's the point here that we're trying to drive at is also you have to understand the process, the difference in process for a new launch on launch day versus a new launch in the period that we call the post-launch, meaning it's been out there, it's currently selling right now. So I do want to urge that anybody who has missed out, be it or not getting a ballot number or not getting a good ballot number for Emerald Katong, to consider some of these other projects, especially in D15, not just on price, but also on value. And my definition of value here is that you know what you're getting into. In Continuum right now, if you were to go there, consider a unit, purchase a unit, you're talking about a period where there's no balloting needed. You have very clear transparency on pricing. You know exactly how much of the project has been sold. You can see the reception that the market has had to the project. And one other key thing here is that you're looking at a project that's potentially 6 months to a year, expected handover earlier. So we are talking about at an opportunity right now, right? You were ready to buy EOK. There's an opportunity right now to buy something that's similar, that's higher value because of its freehold status, and it's only going to be a marginal sum more. But you're talking about an earlier handover of the keys, meaning getting the keys in an earlier fashion. You're also talking potentially about not getting yourself into that same ballot process for future projects ahead. Because think about it right now. If you are already at the threshold, and we deal with clients like this all the time, you're potentially at a threshold where you're looking at a two-bedder, a three-bedder. The price trend is very clear. It's a visual representation that the property market is buoyant, is stable, and is strong. It's slowly going up. In a matter of time, right? If we are keep continuously seeing record prices, you are eventually going to get priced out. let's say you wait for a project 1 year down the line, or you decided to buy, I missed EOK, I will buy 2 years from now, for example. You're going to realize your budget for a two-bedder might have shrunk down to a one bed per study.
Mm,
And maybe you think to yourself, no, I definitely need 2 bedrooms. I don't want a one bed per study. You're then going to be forced in a way to look at the OCR market.
mm,
So there's always a hierarchy when it comes to these properties. And I think now will always be more valuable than later. So I do
mm,
want to hammer home the point that it's important that you were ready to transact EOK. It's important that you start looking and considering projects that's currently in the market, already selling, that potentially posits as great value.
Just to add two nuggets of thought to Hector's points that um why would we feel that the pricing right is on the uptrend in the foreseeable future is number one, the macro point about interest rates coming down, right?
Yes.
Because in US, the Federal Reserve, which basically sets the world interest rates, is starting to do the rate cut. Okay, granted, maybe the rate cut will not be as fast as initially thought, but it doesn't defeat the trend where it's on a downward trend. That's been one of the contributing factor why there's a November madness, right? Because people with the interest rates coming down, their buying power goes up. Okay. And second is also the fact that the median incomes of, you know, Singaporeans or even residents of Singapore has been rising. Yeah, so that confers them increasing purchasing power. So so if anybody feels that hey, the market is muted, the market is quiet, I think I think November is a very special month because with those six launches, it lured all the buyers from all corners of Singapore, right? So to hammer back and on the point that Hector mentioned, the market is buoyant, the market is strong, the market is stable, right? So last but not least, right, we want to point out, you know, the opportunities, the strong buyer demand in D15, right?
Hmm.
Uh, to hammer in the point about in D15, right? Why we feel that now it could be freehold, the opportunity could be a freehold. Yes, for Hector, you want to, you know, give a quick thoughts about this slide before we end off with what opportunities ahead in Q1 2025.
Sure. I think in D15, there's a very unique buyer profile. Buyer profiles are surrounded by properties that are essentially more freehold than 99-year leasehold. So in the previous comparison between EOK and Continuum, it's a very, very good comparison because both are big developments with more than 800 units. In fact, EOK has 846, Continuum has 816 units. We're talking about a very big piece of land, many units, good comparison because it's a freehold versus a 99. So on this chart here, you're seeing two lines, a yellow and a blue line. The yellow represents freehold or 999, 999 leasehold, and the blue line represents your 99-year leasehold. Trending wise, when we look across the board, again, no surprise, right? From the same time period, if you're looking at just the last 5 years, they're all on uptrend. It's a slow uptrend in terms of pricing for both freehold and 99. You would see similarities and instances where the 99 has surpassed the freehold. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, they seem to be about the same, they look about the same. But when we look at the past few months towards the right, you're starting to see a very big divergence in terms of the yellow line, which is represented by freehold, versus the 99. And a lot of this is attributed to the current appetite in the market. Buyers have actually transacted at these prices. You're talking about your Continuum, your Mayor Blue in D15
Mm,
versus your Tembusu Grand and Admiral of Katong 99-year leasehold.
mm,
I think that there is a higher runway for the freehold properties because if I were to remove all the very small erratic spikes in the yellow line, in the blue line, I'm going to be looking at always that substantial gap
mm,
between the freehold and the 99-year leasehold. And the last few months, that gap has really increased quite a bit. So
mm,
if I were to posit people who bought Mayor Blue Continuum between the prices of 2,700 to 3,000 PSF, it's very, very unlikely that we are looking at them selling lower than the amount that they bought. is
mm,
actually an unprofitable transaction. I don't think that's going to be the case. Buyers who buy into this area typically have a home concept, they have families, they grew up in the area, the holding power is pretty strong. So,
mm,
in my opinion, right now, I think that UK has set a new precedence for the 99-year leasehold price. But at the same time, I also think projects like Continuum, especially, and Mayor Blue have really factored in that freehold premium.
mm,
And that freehold premium currently right now is not a big difference with the record prices at EOK.
mm,
Meaning, from a relative standpoint, Continuum is relatively undervalued.
mm. Also, a fun fact for everybody who's watching the show, right? That in D15, right, surprisingly, we have quite a high concentration of freehold condominiums, right? So we're not just talking about the Mayor area where you have projects like Mayor Blue, Mayor Mansion, right? Even we're looking at Amber area, places like Amber Park, right? Or even down to Katong area, places like Haycourt, right? So just D15, right? The buyer demand is strong, right? So we are seeing pockets of opportunity in freehold D15, right? So for some of you who might be wondering, maybe it's not too much of the freehold smaller projects. Yes, so we're also looking at the freehold larger projects, right? So
Mm. The
hence,
larger the larger freehold projects make up less than 2%. When I
mm,
say larger, it's anything more than 400 units.
mm,
There are less than 2% of the developments that are freehold in D15 that have more than 400 units. And we talked a bit earlier about why the transaction volume matters. So a development that has 30 units is not going to have the same kind of price appreciation compared to a development with 800 units. I
mm.
have to make that very, very clear.
Sure. Right. So I know like towards the final parts of these shows, some of you might be wondering, okay, beyond D15, what are the, noteworthy upcoming projects out there? Right. So we have, sort of we're concluding today's episode sort of with what we see in the horizon Q1 2025. Right? Two very interesting projects that will come out in 2025, first 3 months, namely the Ori and Parktown residence. For those who might not know, the Ori is at Toa Payoh, just opposite GEM. In fact, just minutes walk to the Braddell MRT. Right? Parktown is a new mixed development by CapitaLand, right? So it's
Venice.
on a very large plot of land, 50,000 square meters plot of land. Yeah. So these are the land prices respectively, right? So for Hector, you want to comment a bit about like what do you think will be the average selling price in these two projects, and with reference to November Madness, is there still opportunities, in first Q 2025 for those of our viewers who might have missed out?
Yes and no. So I think I'm just going to give my personal opinion, right? So these two projects are going to be very hyped up in the early part of next year, Q1. Ori and Parktown are very, very good comparisons or noteworthy experiments that I consider. Ori is an RCR project located in the Bio. Parktown is an OCR project located in Tampines. The land prices are on screen for everyone to look at. If we were to factor in certain calculations like your construction, your marketing costs, agency, pay lawyer fees, etc., right? And factor in a 20 or 25% profit margin, we are looking at the Ori potentially launching close to 2,600, which is in line with the RCR average PSF. Parktown, on the other hand, is an interesting one because it's a mixed-use development. So
Mm,
even though we factor in the same calculation, I don't think developers are going to be launching anywhere close to 1,900 PSF. If I were to make a guess, the Ori might be at 2,600, Parktown might be at about 2,200.
mm,
So the age-old question is, wow, this sounds expensive. It seems expensive. Should we wait further? Should we not wait further? So 3 points to my opinion. The first point here is I think waiting is just going to inevitably hurt you. It's going to be a case where the project that comes after that, it's going to be more and more expensive. There's never a good time. Like waiting is not the strategy. Point number two. I think with regards to these two prices, Clive and myself will definitely do a in-depth review or preview video about the two projects. But of the information that we have on hand right now, I would say that Ori might be a little bit overpriced. Might not be a popular opinion. I think Ori might be a little bit overpriced at 2,600. Park Town, if they were to really launch at 2,200, I think that's probably going to be one of the value buys of next year, just given the size of the development. So for comparison's sake, Ori, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Clive, Ori, I believe, is 700 over units.
Yeah, 777 to be
Triple
precise.
seven, right? Yeah.
Yeah, triple
Park
seven.
Town is 1,193 units.
Actually.
So I do think that Park Town in the OCR area, slight proximity to MRT, not as good as Ori to Brother MRT, at 2,200 might be one of the best value buys next year. Again, everything is relative. If I were to say that these two are good on its own, it doesn't do justice to the other projects that are out there in the market because, seriously speaking, there are other projects out there that have launched earlier, which means you get to move in earlier at a price that is cheaper than these two.
Mm.
If you were to
So,
wait and consider these two, my pick would be Park Town over Ori at this moment.
mm, uh, my last nugget of information would be I feel right now what we are saying is a bit too speculative because like no
Mm.
indicative pricing is out, right? We're just purely speculating on the land price, how much profit would the developers be making, right? But you know, but all we know is that Ori is going to preview in Jan, right? So that's when it's interesting for prospective buyers who are thinking like if you're looking at Ori, right, you can approach us to do a pricing analysis, right? Quick one for me, because the time is almost up, is that you know, Trump up averaged out at 2,579 PSF. If you factor in the harmonization of aircon ledgers of 5%, I impute a 1.05 times 2,579 PSF. I'm landing over 2007 PSF post harmonization price. So I'm positing a question out there. I'm not answering for anybody. If Trump Park has a post harmonization average price of 2007, being in the OCR area, so incidentally also quite close to Ori near Brother MRT, and if Brother can, you know, averaged out at 2005 XXPSF versus 2007 PSF, like maybe the viewers can comment in the box. Is then Trump up or Ori a better buy? Right? So I'm just positioning this question as an endpoint. Yeah. So for Hector, anything to add on your part before I end the episode?
No, I think that's a worthy question to think about. I have my own opinions on it, but yeah, it's definitely a question to think about. It's a question to posit for these two particular projects. But I think my last parting point here is ultimately there isn't a good time. There is never a good time to buy a property. I think a good time only happens when you've done your research, your due diligence, speak to a trusted advisor like any of us here, Clive and myself. I think that's where you start to explore options and we work out rationale and provide you with insights into why we think a project might be suitable for you. So my point here is don't wait. Just because you didn't participate in any of the six launches in November this year doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider any opportunities out there in the market right now because there's still quite a few there's still inventory in my opinion that is worthwhile looking at that's good value buys right now versus trying to get into the chaos of new projects, going through the ballot process again, potentially being disappointed at the pricing or your ballot number. I do think taking action is important, both in terms of consideration as well as prepping yourself to get ready to buy a property. So don't wait, right? Ultimately, don't wait.
Yes, so time in the market is always better than time in the market. So as the
Mm.
old saying goes. Okay. So this is the end of our episode, right? So we hope to see everybody again in the next episode. Probably we will be doing a previews of these two projects, right? So stay tuned. There will be interesting content coming up, right? Okay. That's all for
Right.
today.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Right. See you in the next
Bye-bye.
episode. Bye bye.